Nobody likes tax season, but for new retirees, it can hit a little bit different, right? The rules have changed, the income sources have shifted for you, and strategies that made sense during your working years may no longer apply. So, today we're going to talk about some of those tax mistakes that retirees often make and try to help you prevent some of those as you get ready for that next chapter. Welcome into Perfect Game Retirement. Glad to see you again here on YouTube. If you're listening on your favorite podcasting app, come check us out on YouTube as well. Just search for Black Oak Asset Management. We're glad you're here with us talking tax mistakes. I know, Ryan, we talk all the time about tax planning. It's a big part of what you do. But this episode is going to highlight some of those key reasons why you spend so much time and effort with your clients on taxes.
Yeah, because you just don't want to pay more than what you should. Pay what you need to, but there's strategies and ways around this stuff. So why not take advantage of them? They're there. The laws are put there for a reason, and they're thousands and thousands of pages long. So let's try to take advantage of them.
Yeah, we're going to reference an article that came out in Kiplinger recently that we'll drop in the show notes as well. If you want to read it for yourself, it's about those biggest tax mistakes, and wanted to find out whether or not these kind of match what you're seeing in Black Oak Asset Management as you serve your clients around the Atlanta area there, Ryan. So I want to start with RMDs. The big tax mistake that they point out is that retirees will often ignore these upcoming RMDs when they're approaching. And look, they don't happen until your mid 70s. So you think that's a ways down the road, but why is it a mistake to ignore these?
Yeah, because that could be from a long-term planning standpoint, but also just flat forgetting to take RMDs because there's a penalty to do that. But so the sooner you start thinking about what are my RMDs are going to look like, and again, RMDs required minimum distributions that is set by the IRS tax code, and it's a formula based off what the account balance is on 12/31 of the previous year. So we look at those things and do calculate those. Obviously, you can look online and do a calculator yourself, but just to make sure that you are doing these right, because whatever your RMD is, let's just use a rough round number. If it's $10,000, what your RMD is that you have to take out, then essentially your penalty, if you don't take that $10,000 out, is going to be $2,500. It's 25% of what the value is. So one, just completely ignoring them, that's a hefty tax bill, penalty on top of your tax bill. So, but then just kind of forward thinking and forward planning. So there's a lot of people that we work with that the majority of their retirement income, their nest egg is going to be in pre-tax accounts. So if we're not thinking about that, maybe you're 63 and you still have 10 years before you have to start taking your required minimum distributions. Hey, what can we do over the next 10 years to maybe lessen that dollar amount, whether that's in Roth conversions or whatever it may be, but get that dollar amount down? Because if you have everything in a pre-tax account and then your RMD age hits, you have no wiggle room on how much you take out. There's a certain amount you have to take out, and then you pay your tax bill on top of that. So there's a lot of things to be thinking of. But again, RMD ages out there for those of you who are out there. Anybody born between 1951 and 1959, age 73 is your required minimum distribution. It used to be younger. It used to be 70 and a half, but these laws have changed over time. Anyone born after 1960, when they retire, when they get to their RMD age, is going to be 75. So that number keeps kind of moving further and further back, which is kind of good. It gives you more time to plan and maybe get that pre-tax account lower and lower. Roth IRAs do not have required minimum distributions. Do not. So you can leave that money in there and let it cook as long as you want and have that increase as much as you want potentially, and then not have to pay or not have to do RMDs out of it. So there's just more flexibility there. Pre-tax accounts, there's really no flexibility. And if that account gets higher and higher and higher and you need money out, you're going to have to pay that tax no matter what the tax rate is at that time.
All right. So RMDs, they might seem like they're off a little bit in the distance, but hey, the more action you take now, the better off you can be, and the more options you'll have right down the road when RMDs come around. So a way to avoid that big tax mistake potentially. All right. Our second one here, Ryan, is Roth conversion. So either they're done wrong or just not done at all, right? There's a couple of different ways you can approach this, but what about Roth conversions do people typically mess up?
So it could just be like just really specifically knowing what that dollar amount is going to be. We've had clients that we've brought in that maybe the previous year they did too much of a Roth conversion, and that moved their income up too much where their Medicare premiums really shot up. So there's other ramifications that could happen. So if your taxable income is over a certain amount, whether you're filing single or married filing jointly, that could increase your tax burden, one, but two, it could throw you into a different tax bracket where maybe you weren't accounting for, you're in the 12% bracket and you did a Roth conversion, and most of that Roth conversion moved you to the 22. So you thought you were in the 12, but now you're paying 22% because that Roth conversion stacks on top of what your ordinary income is already. But again, if you do too much, then it could potentially increase your Medicare premiums that maybe you weren't aware of. And that sting happens the whole year because, again, Medicare premiums are a 2-year look back. So we have to be aware of these things. So just being aware of what tax bracket you're in, how much wiggle room you have within that tax bracket, and then just knowing how much is my tax bill going to be. Usually, my recommendation is to pay the tax out of your checking account, not of the converted amount. So if you move 10 grand over, don't take the taxes out of the 10 grand and pay the IRS. Just move the whole 10 grand and then pay the tax. If you owe any, pay the tax out of your own back pocket. That way 10 grand slides over to your Roth, and that is now hopefully growing over time and compounding over time. So a lot of things to consider, but those are kind of a few of the big points to really be cognizant of when you're doing a Roth conversion.
Yeah, again, one of those things you want to have a plan for before you go ahead and pull the trigger and do it. Obviously, a lot of people are talking about Roth conversions now. Could be a great strategy for you, but again, talk with an advisor before you make that move and just make sure you're doing it correctly. Again, you can go to speakwithryan.com to have a conversation with Ryan and the team at Black Oak Asset Management. All right, our third mistake that retirees often make in terms of taxes is just getting blindsided by Social Security taxes. And I guess, Ryan, people just assume, well, look, my income tax days are behind me, right? I don't have to worry about it with Social Security. I've been paying in this my whole life, but these benefits can be taxed, can't they?
They can, and it's pretty easy for them to be taxed, actually. But yeah, some people just aren't aware that possibly could be a thing to pay. You pay Social Security tax your entire life, and now you're in retirement, and you could potentially pay them again, depending on what your taxable, again, not income, but taxable income is going to be. So just being aware of that. And the problem with these thresholds is they haven't been, I don't know the exact year, but they haven't been indexed in a long time. So the income thresholds are very, very small. So if you're married filing jointly and you're under $32,000 of taxable income, well, you don't pay taxes. From 32 to 44,000, you pay 50% of your benefit can be taxed. It's not taxed at 50%, just 50% of the benefit. So if your benefit is $2,000, $1,000 can be taxed at whatever your tax rate is. And that may be a little confusing sounding, but there's software. I'm sure you work with a CPA. Again, work with an advisor who can plug this into a planning software and it spits out the number for you. But if you're over 44,000, 85% of your benefit is taxed at your rate. So there's a lot of people that fall into that 85% because their taxable income is going to be over 44,000. And there's another calculation on how they come up with that dollar amount. It's called provisional income. So they add these things up. And even if you have municipal bonds that are quote unquote tax-free, well, they add that in there as well. And then half of your Social Security benefit. So again, they make it complex and confusing, but a lot of people fall over that 44,000. If you're a single filer, if you're over 34,000, then you get taxed. Your benefit is 85% of your benefit is taxed at your ordinary rate. So again, going back to our previous point of Roth conversions, that doesn't count toward your taxable income. So again, just other things to think about of the benefits of a Roth conversion. If done correctly, it's going to lower that potential impact of what taxes would be for Social Security. And I don't like to get political on this show, and I probably never will, but you can't blame this on one political party or another. Reagan was the first to tax it, and Bill Clinton was the second to tax it. So you can't blame one party. It was a math problem. They're like, hey, we got to tax this more. So could it be taxed 100% of it one day? Sure. Social Security is under a little bit of stress. So yeah, they could change the full retirement age. They could change the taxes of it. So a lot of things they could do to keep Social Security going as long as possible.
Yeah, who knows what the future of Social Security might hold, right? No real answer right now, but we'll find out soon enough. But again, that's why you work with an advisor, to have a plan, so you don't have to completely rely on it. But also in this conversation, just being prepared for the taxes that you might be paying on those benefits you do receive. So that brings us to our fourth and final mistake that I want to discuss with you, Ryan, and that's for people that forget to plan for a spouse or their heirs. And look, you might not feel this one directly because you'll be gone, obviously, right? But your loved ones will. And that's important, right? To make sure that you are taking care of them. And there's some moves you could do now to help prevent them getting hit with a big tax bill.
Yeah, I mean, this is huge because I deal with this. I deal with this all the time because I work with couples, and one person passes away, and then I'm there to help that spouse who's still behind, to help them out with, one, just kind of picking up the emotional pieces, which is tough, and then helping with the financial pieces of these things. And so we want to plan for those things. We want to plan for, when people are claiming, pension benefits, we want to make sure that spouse is taken care of. And then we just mentioned Social Security. If you have a husband and wife and they both receive Social Security, I mean, the bright side is you get to keep the higher of the two. So that's the silver lining. And obviously you can't keep both. So one is going to drop off. So something to consider and think about, and just know going in, when you start claiming Social Security, you need to think about the legacy that you're going to leave behind with that lower earning spouse. But also when you file single, your tax bracket could potentially change, which is kind of strange. And, my dad, when my mom passed away, not only did he lose his spouse, well, his pension and his retirement, he actually moved up in a tax bracket, because the single filer tax bracket, because of his pension and his Social Security benefit, it moved him to a higher bracket. So that's something you need to be even cognizant of, that you may be in the 12 or the 22, and you may shoot up to the 22 or the 24. So a lot of things to consider there, especially when you're alive. And here, it's a morbid conversation to have, but it needs to be had. And what does this look like when one spouse goes away? And then when both go away, what does that legacy leave behind to your potential heirs if you have kids? And if you don't have kids, what does that look like? Who does that go to?
Yeah, it's a big one there. So look, these are some of the key tax mistakes that retirees will make. And look, a lot of this is not about carelessness. It's about just not knowing what you don't know, right? And that's why you work with an advisor. Ryan is a certified financial planner. The good news, Ryan, is a lot of these are avoidable, aren't they? Just a little bit of planning and the right guidance.
It is. And some of these things are complex, like some of the math we were talking about on how Social Security is taxed. But some of it's just very simple, just like knowing you have RMDs. Most people, I think, know they have RMDs. So how can we get better around planning for those things? And one thing to help alleviate that is QCDs, a qualified charitable distribution. So that can count as your RMD, and it goes to a charity. Again, we've had episodes on that before, but that's another planning strategy to think about. And maybe people may be like, what is a QCD? I've never heard of that. Well, again, another planning tool that just, if you have an advisor, hopefully they're guiding you through these things.
Yeah, that's the key, right? Have an advisor that you can work with to make sure you're going through each of these and preparing yourself for retirement, and also making sure you're keeping as much of that money that you work for. That's the key. So hopefully this video has given you some things to think about, but more importantly, take action on. And if you want to talk with Black Oak Asset Management, they take care of tax planning all the time with their clients as part of the overall process when you're preparing for retirement. You can go to speakwithryan.com to get on the calendar now. But we appreciate you watching. As always, please subscribe to the channel. We appreciate the support. We'll talk to you again soon.